Hi, everybody. I thank you for joining me, and I hope you're doing well. I'm here today because I wanted to toss together a little reading update before the end of the month, and this was my best opportunity to do it, so here I am. I'll try to keep this somewhat brief. My last video ran way too long, so let's get into it. First, I'll talk about one of my most recent failures. I've temporarily thrown in the towel on Herodotus. The reason being, I've touched on a bit in other videos. I got into book 2, and he kind of segues into Egypt away from the forerunner to the Greco-Persian Wars, and I just lost interest. I was really wanting to read about the Greco-Persian Wars, and he went in a different direction. Now, I may return to Herodotus one day. My understanding is that scholars suspect that book 2 might have originally been intended as a separate work. So I'm not just out there in La La Land when I notice something different about it. But yeah, I'm just not in the mood to continue with it right now. I've kind of lost my taste for ancient history. I'm moody, and a little bit of the black dog is on me. Hopefully it's one of those annoying, yippy little black dogs that you just want to kick like a soccer ball instead of some horrible beast leaving a horrible trail of carnage across the moors. But in any case, I apologize if you were just itching to hear the musings of some guy about Herodotus who has no expertise and can't even read the language. So, yeah, Herodotus is kaput for now. But on to what I have finished recently. I did finish Spooky Action at a Distance, Why Space and Time Are Doomed, and What It Means for Black Holes, The Big Bang, and Theories of Everything. Now, this is about highly theoretical physics presented at a somewhat lay, accessible level. The author was losing me, and I don't know, I've probably waded maybe knee deep in my formal education as far as physics goes, but yeah, he was still above my head at points. But this author is very big on the phenomenon of non-locality, meaning at the quantum level especially, we sometimes observe phenomena that seem to happen, for want of a better term, in two places at once, where two particles seem to be entangled with each other and influence each other instantly in a way that involves no intervening medium and isn't restrained by the speed of light or anything like that. Non-local action. And in talking about this phenomenon, the author goes into what I would call basic quantum mechanics, which I understand somewhat. Then he gets into quantum field theory, which is basically regular quantum mechanics with relativity added. And that involves much more serious math, and that's where I get lost. But then he gets much more hypothetical with some of the models being posited that see space and even sometimes time as possibly being an emergent phenomenon that occurs when some underlying principle we don't really understand very well acts in a particularly organized way. This involves a lot of highly mathematical ideas, a lot of strange geometries. It's very theoretical. It's interesting, certainly. My problem with this stuff is I've always been very inquisitive. I want to understand what lies at the foundation of all things, certainly. But I'm also kind of practical minded. Maybe growing up on a farm does that to you. Just for example, I've shoveled a lot of animal waste in my years. Maybe I should look into doing that some more. It's one of those rare times I felt truly beautiful. The way that only someone who's found their one true purpose can. But anyway, I digress. The point is, when I'm shoveling animal waste, I can think about it all I want. I know that stuff isn't going to spooky action itself to where it needs to go, or at least the probability of that happening is so tiny as to be infinitesimal for all practical purposes. So, yeah, I can only hang out in theoretical land for so long before I say, enough, I need to go back to planet Earth. But all his boasting about space and time being doomed, yeah, what he means is he thinks it's time that we begin thinking of physics in non-spatial terms. Do I say, okay, the theorists want to do that, go for it. And I guess the Big Bang stuff, he's wanting to invoke non-local action as an explanation for the uniformity of the cosmos instead of inflationary cosmology, which I'm not exactly sold on inflationary cosmology either, but I mean, okay, I have no reason to think that non-local action is working at the level of entire galactic clusters either, so what are you going to do? And the black holes business, of course, that's looking at the holy grail of trying to unite general relativity and quantum mechanics and understanding the action of black holes and how they can evaporate. He gets into the holographic principle and all that's way above my head, but I guess that's what I have to say about that book. It's okay. Yeah. But next book I read, give me a second here while I tinker with my e-reader, was the Clifford Simak science fiction novel Ring Around the Sun. How to talk about this? I don't want to talk about the characters because a lot of the suspense and mystery of the novel centers around the characters discovering their identity and how they fit into the plot. So it's hard to talk about them without major spoilers. Plus it gets kind of convoluted and I'm just too lazy to try explaining it right now. But as far as the general concept of the novel, I'll try to lay that out for you. I guess this is, well, Simak wrote it, or published it at least, during the 50s. And he intended it to be set in the then future 1980s. But that's really neither here nor there. I think the important thing is that it happened during the Cold War. And the premise is some so-called mutant humans who, mutant can mean all sorts of things. Most mutations are either deleterious or completely indifferent. But these mutants in this novel are, think in terms of the X-Men almost, they have discovered, or they have developed certain gifts above the run-of-the-mill human. Some of them have psychic abilities. Some of them are just particularly gifted in certain areas. And they have begun to discover each other and have secretly decided they're going to kick humanity out of its sad, warlike rut. Like I said, this was during the Cold War when everybody was expecting to be annihilated any minute. Now, to do this, some of them are telepathic, and I guess they're able to listen to far-off alien civilizations and learn about new technologies. I guess the speed of light doesn't apply to thought waves, but no matter, this is fiction. And in the meanwhile, others have discovered that there are basically an infinite number of Earths that exist in different time frames. Like there might be another Earth that exists a second before this one, and one that exists a second behind this one. Parallel worlds, if you will. But you can see this as an infinite series in either way. Thus the whole image of the ring around the sun, all these Earths that exist at all these different time frames. But these mutants are manufacturing really physically impossible, perfect technologies that never break or wear out, and have access to limitless resources and are flooding the markets with these things in an attempt to basically totally crash the current economy, really disrupt things. And they have also created a synthetic food source, and they plan on taking these desperate people that are out of work and just surviving on these synthetic foods and transferring them to one of the alternate Earths. And they are going to basically rebuild human civilization from scratch and try to do it right. Try not to get us back down this path of warlike nuclear standoff. are going to try to build things up from the beginning to where we can reach for the stars, so to speak. So that's their plan. But of course, the captains of industry, so-called, in our current time frame, who are quite happy with the place they've achieved, don't like this, and they're going to do everything they can to try to stop it. That's the basic plot. Now, it's an okay novel. I have some objections to the premise, and that I think it's kind of a folly of an idea. I mean, to try to reshape human civilization. I mean, human temperament has been shaped by millions of years of natural evolution. You're not going to change what humans are by moving them to some new pristine earth and trying to start all over again. Humans will still be humans. And not only that, I saw no reason to think that these so-called mutants, just because they had some special talent, would be of necessity also benevolent and wanting to save humanity from itself. I see no reason to think that they wouldn't otherwise be just as ambitious and greedy as any other human. So, yeah, those are kind of my objections to the premise. But like I said, it's okay. And the business, like I said, with the characters, the mystery of them figuring out who they are exactly and how they fit into the plot, kind of keeps the pages turning. So, yeah, there's Ring Around the Sun. Not sure what else to say about that. But as far as what I plan to be reading in the future, really wasn't sure until I saw that Bill Rutenberg at the Rutenberg Library channel and Peg at the History Shelf channel, both excellent channels. I will link below. In fact, go check them out. You shouldn't be listening to this slop, but especially if you're interested in history, check them out. But they are reading James McPherson's Battle Cry of Freedom. And I have read a lot of books about the U.S. Civil War, but I have yet to read that one. It is supposed to be the one-volume treatment. It's considered a classic, and I thought I would kind of parasitize off of them and take that as my cue to finally get that sucker read. So, yeah, I've gotten a lot of recommendations from Bill and Peg. They might have been among the first booktubers I discovered, even before I knew booktube was a thing. So, yeah, I think that's what I'm going to take on next. And just to kind of supplement that, I have here an anthology of 19th century American short stories from the Library of America, so that I could just kind of dip into that if I'm in the mood for something different every now and then. And also have here my Oxford Book of American Verse. Maybe I could dip into that as well. So, there goes the dog. But yeah, that's what I'm planning. Hopefully I'll stick to it, but I'll warn you, if you're looking for constancy and perseverance, you're probably in the wrong place. But yeah, I think I'll call that a finished this one. Hope you're doing well, and feel free to let me know what you're reading in the comments. Hopefully I'll be in more of a talking mood next video I record, but till then, I hope you're doing well, and later days.
But am I not turtly enough for the Turtle Club?